During these months where it's really cold outside, one thing that I'm always looking forward to is one really good bowl of chili. And to make it more barbecue-y, we're gonna add some brisket. But we're gonna be trying different techniques. So this video is gonna kinda include two different things. One, how to make a super flavorful base for chili that you guys can customize however you'd like. And the second part is gonna be about how to trim and cook brisket burnt ends. So with that being said, let's get cooking.
For this recipe, I try to find a bigger brisket than I usually get. This is about a 17-pound brisket. Since we're only using the point, getting a small brisket wouldn't be recommended for this. I'm also going to trim this brisket differently than how I normally would. If you guys want to see a more traditional, more detailed brisket trim video with all my tricks and tips, be sure to watch the video I linked in the top corner for you. But just like every brisket trim, start by taking off that heel fat and trim down the thick layer of fat on top of the point to about 1/8 of an inch. I like to trim more off the top of the point since it's already so marbled. And now, I'm going to be doing something that I haven't done since I was probably 13 or 14 years old. Separate the point from the flat. I know, it felt wrong to say and even worse to do, but for the purposes of today's cook, I think it's going to make for a better product. Follow the layer of fat that goes in between the flat and the point. It's pretty thick, so it's easy to follow. Just try not to cut into the point as it tapers off into the lean. Traditional burnt ends are made by splitting the two muscle groups after a few hours of cooking, but I personally don't love that method. It leaves the lean end of the brisket a little too tight for my liking. I feel like you're sacrificing the lean just to cook the point. Once it's separated, reserve the flat for other purposes like ground beef, burgers, sausage, or chili. And now our point looks like a mini baby brisket. When you flip it over, if you still have some fat from where we split the two muscle groups, take off as much fat as you can to expose the point muscle underneath so that you can create the best bark possible. Double check everything to make sure you have the right amount of fat and that nothing super thin is hanging on that would dry out in the cooking process. And there you have it, folks. This is my trimmed brisket for burnt ends. And yes, I know that my friend Chud has already done this before. I'm sure other barbecue YouTubers have done this before as well. I'm not trying to steal anyone's ideas, it's just that great minds think alike. To season this brisket, I'm going to use the same rub I always use for brisket and beef ribs. It's 50/50 diamond crystal salt and 16 mesh black pepper. And once I have that by volume, I'll add in a little bit more black pepper for better bark. Season all sides of the brisket and let's go take this outside. Today I'll be cooking on my 250-gallon primitive pit Heisenberg. And you guys know the drill. For maximum flavor, we're using Fogelum charcoal, Chud snake nests, and Korean newspaper. This one was printed exactly the same day the cow was slaughtered to make sure the flavor of the Korean newspaper and brisket are paired to perfection. Once the coals are ready, we're going to heat up Heisenberg to 285 to 300 degrees because it's colder outside and we're only cooking the point, which has a lot of fat. Place the brisket towards the back and don't spritz it, don't mop it, don't poke it, don't flip it, don't foil tip it. As a matter of fact, don't even look at it for the next 5 hours. I don't know if you guys know this, but 95% of all briskets are introverts. Doesn't want to see you. If you keep bothering it, it'll just say screw you and tighten up. If you really need to share your love with someone, hang out with a fire. 85% of all fires are extroverts. They're looking for your attention all day long. That's my fire management tip of the day. While we leave our brisket alone in his room for a few hours, let's go make our delicious chili. To create the base, start with dried chilies, which consist of 3 guajillo chilies, 2 pasillas, 1 big or 2 smaller anchos, and 4 to 5 chili de árbol for some added spice. You can use whatever chilies you'd like, but these just happen to be the 4 chilies I recognize at the grocery store. De-stem and de-seed all the chilies. Okay, I'm going to be really vulnerable right now and maybe say something that's really dumb, but I never understood why it's called chili until I realized, oh, there are actual chilies in here. I'm so used to seeing ground chili powder being used, and to me it was so dissociated from the raw ingredient that I never really made the connection. All that to say, if you haven't made chili with real dried chilies before, you are missing out. Now that they're de-stemmed and de-seeded, we're going to toast the chilies. You can do this in a pan if you'd like, but I'm going to do this in an oven. Some of them may have more moisture than others. The big ancho was a little bit more flimsy, so I broke it up to make sure it has more surface area. Stick the chilies in a 400-degree oven for a few minutes. You'll know when they're done when it looks like this, and the chilies feel brittle and have this sort of sound. But you'll know when they're done when you can smell them.
Ooh, that smells good.
all the slightly bitter, sweet, smoky, toasty aromas will fill the kitchen. Take all the toasted chilies, give them a light crunch, and steep them in about 16 ounces of hot liquid. In this case, I'll be using beef stock that I showed you guys how to make in my last French onion soup video. Cover the top and let it steep for about 10 minutes. After the chilies are done steeping, blend until there are no more visible dried chilies, and it becomes a smooth, homogeneous paste. And with that, you create the flavor bomb paste that will be the base of our amazing chili. To a pot or a Dutch oven, add about 2 tablespoons of oil. And for this chili, I'm going to be using ground bison. I know it may sound like an odd choice, but I like having a tighter chili that doesn't have too much fat. And I also like that it's a stronger flavor that'll stand up to all the other bold chilies. But also keep in mind that brisket will be added to this later, which will give us that fat that we're looking for. Once the bison is browned and there's a nice fond on the bottom, remove it so it doesn't overcook. If the bottom of the pot looks a little dry, add in a little bit more oil and saute 1 large diced onion and 2 poblanos. Dice them both a bit bigger to add a textural component to the chili. Like Kevin from The Office says, the trick is to undercook the onions. Everybody is going to get to know each other in the pot. Once the onions and poblanos are fragrant, add in 8 cloves of minced garlic. At this point, we're going to be adding in our dry ingredients. If you're not careful, you can burn your garlic or spices, so adjust accordingly by adding a little bit more oil again or reduce the heat. Start with 20 grams of chili powder, 5 grams of cumin, and just to add some Korean spice and smokiness to this chili, add in a little bit of gochugaru. As you can see, the pot looks very dry with all these spices in there. So we're going to add in some more flavorful liquid. I'm going to add in this beer made by my neighbor, Marshall. A few times a year, he brings us his home brew, which doesn't last us very long. It has some sweetness and is a little floral. I think it's going to work perfectly with this chili. Thanks, Marshall. But before we have a drink, let's introduce the sponsor of this video, ZBiotics.
We all have busy lives these days and can't afford to waste a day stuck on the couch because of a few drinks the night before. ZBiotics is the answer we've been looking for. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to help you feel better the morning after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. I like to go to the gym in the morning, but it's hard to do so after a few drinks the night before. But after trying ZBiotics before having a few drinks, I felt as good as new the next morning, ready to take on my day. So if you want to give it a try, go to zbiotics.com/Knox Ave BBQ or scan the QR code on the screen right now to get 15% off your first order when you use Knox Ave BBQ at checkout. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this video. To the pot, slowly stir in about 12 ounces of beer or any liquid you'd like while scraping off any of the dried spices off the bottom. After the beer has reduced, add in the chili paste we made earlier, and then we're going to add 2 28-ounce cans of tomatoes. One can is going to be crushed and the other is going to be diced to add in more texture. When it's all incorporated, add back to the pot the ground bison and give the chili a good pinch of salt. Scrape down the sides with a rubber spatula, put the top on, and let it simmer covered for 45 minutes to an hour, if not longer. This is the time the flavors are all going to meld together. As that continues to cook, let's check on our brisket. After about 7.5 hours, our brisket is done. The brisket felt really jiggly and bouncy and was temping at just above 200 degrees. After resting for about an hour, let's slice into this brisket. Even though we cooked at a higher temp than what most people would recommend, there aren't any edges that are dried up or too crispy. The intramuscular fat is rendered perfectly, and since we trimmed the top layer of fat down to 1/8 of an inch, there's not much of a thick layer of fat sitting on top. For a traditional plated brisket slice, a little more fat is my preference, but for chili, this is what I'm looking for. While these are not your traditional burnt ends that are sauced and cooked twice, I think they have a much better texture cooked like this. They're still bouncy and soft without being mushy. After about an hour, this is what our chili looks like. You can see the condensation rolling off the lid, and that's what I want right now. As the chili is developing flavor, you don't want it to reduce it too quickly. It needs time to develop. After doing a taste test, the chili is obviously a little thin, but tastes great.
At this point, add more salt if necessary. The one item I will add is about 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. It's not added to make it sweet, it's to balance out all the savory ingredients in the chili. Now this will go back on a low to medium low heat, uncovered to reduce. After about 10 minutes, you can see a little bit more action on top as the excess water is evaporating. We're gonna let this go until the amount of bubbles are reduced and the top is looking a bit chunkier. After another 10 to 15 minutes, this is what it should look like. It's thick, hearty, and the reduced chili is clinging to all the ground meats, onions, and peppers. Drop in a few of the burnt ends, mix it evenly to make sure that every bite has a bit of brisket goodness. And now our brisket burnt end chili is done. You absolutely do not put beans in. Oh, okay, I guess beans do go in chili. I know some people don't like beans in chili, but that's how I grew up eating it, and that's the way I like it. I like that it adds a little bit more texture and creaminess. Once the beans are warmed through, your chili is now ready to be served. This is 100% the best chili I've ever had. Making the chili paste is everything. If you haven't made chili like this before, it'll change your whole perspective on how good it can be. The flavor of the bison does carry through, and leaving the onions and poblanos in bigger chunks makes it feel heartier. And to be quite honest with you, the burnt ends were just for fun and to say that I made barbecue, but it works extremely well. It's another element of smokiness and depth of flavor that you don't often think about when you're eating chili. I often say that barbecue doesn't always make everything better, but in this case, it definitely works. I'm definitely gonna make this chili again in the future.
All right guys, so that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making this chili from scratch. And if you guys are new to this channel and you guys are looking for other hearty, warming dishes, this is part 3 of our soup series. And if you guys missed the first 2, you can click either one of these 2 videos to check them out. If you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next one.